This video will show how to repair a Roomie Elite cordless vacuum. The problem we were having with it was the power head would stop every once in a while, would flicker when you twisted it and were using it, it would turn off and turn on. It also wasn't sucking very well. So I'll show you what I did to repair it. First we need to take the vacuum head off of the vacuum, so we're just going to press this button and take it off. Once you have the head removed, the first step is to remove the beater bar. So we just take a flathead screwdriver, give a little twist, lift that up, and the beater bar will come out. So the beater bar will come right out. This is a good time to replace it if if it's beat up a little bit. This is a brand new one, so it works much better than the old one, which was some of the rubber material was torn. The next thing we need to do is remove screws. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 screws. 7, 8. So there's 6 in the black part here in the back part, and then 2 that are underneath the beater bar. We'll take those out and see what that looks like. Okay, once you've got all those screws removed, just make note that the screws that were under the beater bar are a little shorter than the ones. Okay, so now we're going to take this top gray part off. The first time I took it off, I had to get a screwdriver, a flathead screwdriver, and stick it in there and jimmy it off. This one's been off before, so it's going to come off a little easier. But that piece does come off. It just needs to wiggle and jiggle a little bit, and that will come off and reveal the inside of the beater bar. Okay, so my vacuum had 2 problems associated with it. One was the power cord, the electrical that was connecting the beater bar to the wand, to the battery. It was broken. There was a broken wire in there. And so the way that it actually was set up is that if you peel this off, just going to pry off this top part here, this top little cover again, that will come off if you gently pry that up. Actually, there's a little prong underneath here. If you put your finger underneath, you'll feel a little prong, and you can release it. A little tab, right? Those little tabs, if you get underneath and squeeze that in, this will come off. So the problem with mine was the wire just right in here in this swivel had broke. And so you can see I've made a modification. I've just taken that wire and I've reconnected it, and I'm going to redo it in a minute. Not really happy with the job I did in the first place. But I'm going to but the way that was going through, those wires were fed through the inside of this, underneath this this housing and underneath. And I tried to fish the new wire through there, and it was after an hour I gave up. I could not get it back through there. So I just said, forget that. And I went over top. And that seems to work just fine. And so I'll show you the only modification I did to make sure that that wire had enough room is that on the inside, right here, on the inside of that cover, where the wire now is going to go over top of this tube, of the vacuum tube, it's going to go over top. I just made sure there was enough room. So you can see, here's what it looked like on the one side. I just cut this out with a pair of snips or a good strong pair of scissors. Cut that piece of plastic down a little bit to make room for the wire, because I refed the wire over top, which is much, much easier. So don't even bother trying to fish it through where it was originally. It's I was unsuccessful, so it's a waste of time. And this works just fine. The second problem was that you can see the vacuum tube is broken. So that vacuum tube is cracked, and so it was the performance of the vacuum was much, much lower than it was when it was brand new. So we're just going to put some duct tape on that and fix that. We're going to replace this wire, and we're going to be good as new. So you notice that vacuum tube threads into both ends of the vacuum. It threads into the one end and also into this end. This one I've just twisted that, turned it lefty-loosey, spun that tube, and that'll release it from the beater head here. And then you can twist it the opposite direction to release it from the inside. So twist it to the, twist it the same direction, lefty-loosey, to also get it out of this unit here, okay? So I'm just gonna wrap that with duct tape to fix that up. We'll put that back in. Now, to be able to get the wires and feed them through, you're gonna have to remove this little plug that is connecting these two units together. There's you can squeeze underneath and try to squeeze the tabs and try to get it up. When I did that the first time, it broke. One side broke, but that's fine. It still works the way it is. It still retains and still stays in there. So don't worry about that if it breaks too much. Now you can see where those wires go, and so I've taken some new wires and I've fed them up through the bottom, poked them up through so that I could cut the existing wires that were there, connected to the plug here, cut them, and remake that connection. So the wire I used, I just took an old plug that I had from some other device, and I just used the wires from that. I think they're probably 16 or 18 gauge, something like that. So once you feed those through, make the connection on this end. There's not a lot of room in the top, so for that connection, I just soldered those together and wrapped them with tape. I think I'll stick with that. But on the bottom here, I did the same thing there. I soldered those guys and wrapped it with tape. I think I'm going to use a proper little butt connector and remake that connection on the bottom end. Okay, so I've got my wire strippers ready. This is definitely 18 gauge wire that I was using. I think that's plenty. Looks like it's about the same gauge as what was on the original. I'm going to use these solderless butt connectors for 18 to 22 gauge wire. Slide that in. And then we're just going to use our crimping tool and crimp that side. Give it a nice grab, a little squeeze, and that is a good solid connection that's not going to come loose. Note that if you don't have the crimping tool or the butt connectors, you could still just twist those wires together, wrap them up in some electrical tape to keep them from shorting out, and that should be fine. Something like this is a little more permanent. You could also solder if you're handy with a soldering iron, but some way of connecting those wires to each other. Notice the polarity does make a difference, and so when we end up putting this plug back in, if you put it in the wrong way, in terms of positive negative, you will not get any power to your power head. So if you put it back together again and things don't work, just flip this around and try it again, and it'll likely fire up for you. So at this point, once your connections are made, it's probably a good idea to check those connections. So we can just bring our wand back in, plug the plug in where it's going to go normally, give it a try. Okay, so my vacuum is on, but my power head's not working. So I've obviously got that reversed, right? So we would flip that around. Now I can see the positive negative on the top of the plug there. I can see that there's a little positive negative. Now if I turn that on, away we go. Now I'm going to repair the tube. I'm just going to use some duct tape to do that. This is still hanging on with the internal wire, the cord that's in there. Just going to rip some duct tape off and wrap that around. Try to make a good seal on that. Okay, so I've got some duct tape around there. You can still see we still get some flex, and so as we maneuver the vacuum and work with it, it should still function for us just fine. Keep in mind down the road, if your vacuum loses performance, this is the first thing you want to check. Maybe that has cracked and you're actually not getting all the suction that you need. Now we're going to start putting things back together. First thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to wrap these wires with some electrical tape just so that they stay together. Now we're going to put the vacuum tube back in. I was incorrect in the first part where I said this was lefty-loosey to loosen this. This is lefty-loosey to tighten it. So I'm going to screw that in left, and you'll notice that it's threading into the plastic body there. You probably can't see that very closely. But if I zoom in here, you can watch and see what happens. So, right, we're just gonna righty-tighty to take that one out, lefty-loosey, turn left to tighten that in. Now I need to get that into the other side of the vacuum, and it's also going to be the same. It's going to go righty-tighty to tighten that. And so what that will do is that will loosen this one a little bit. So I'll just go a couple turns to get this side snugged into this end. That'll loosen this up, but it'll still have enough turns in there to maintain the connection. So this is a bit tricky. I've got these two swivels put back into position. Try to push the tube into this unit here, into the wand attachment. And while I'm pushing in this way, I'm twisting, trying to get that to thread in. And that might take a few, whoops, you gotta go righty-tighty to get that in there, right? So that may take a few attempts to get that to happen till you can get that connected on both ends. So in this case, that worked. It's connected on this end, it's connected on that end. I'm happy with that. Okay, now final reassembly. Gonna take this plug that broke, but again, like I said, it didn't seem to matter. It still hung in there after I reattached that with even just one prong in there. Make sure that wire's not being crimped. Push that out of the way. Over to the center. Snap that in. We're gonna take this cover, put that back on again to remove that in the starting place. Remember, there's a couple of tabs there. You can reach underneath here with your finger and poke and lift that up. So we're just going to put that in. Make sure you get your plug the proper orientation. Remember, I wanted to see the plus minus sign on the top. Your mileage may vary depending on how you connected those wires. Okay, notice that plug needs to protrude from the end there. And then those tabs will go back into those little holes there. Okay, then we need to put our cover back on. And again, I cut this out. I notched that out right there to make sure that I have room for my wires when I put them in, because now I've rerouted the wires over top of this tube. They used to be, when it was new from the factory, they went through this plastic housing and came out inside here. Like I said earlier, that was really hard. I tried to reroute my wires through there and I couldn't do it. So I just said, forget that. I'm just going to go over top. So I'm just going to make sure these are nice and snug here on the inside. It's going to see this little guy here. That's where I'm going to make sure the wires go right inside that little channel there. That's where I've carved out the top piece. So we're just going to make sure they're lined up and replace our cover. Start pushing and snapping that into place. There we go. Looks like a pretty tight fit. So we'll just replace the screws. 2 screws in here underneath the beater bar, 6 screws on the back side, and we should be good to go. All right, all 8 screws are back in place. Final step is to put our beater bar back in. One side is the drive that connects to the drive unit on over here, and the other side is just a bearing that spins freely, and that pops into the side that's open here. So we'll connect in the drive side. It's got a little triangular drive. I'm going to make sure that it slides in. There it is, and drop into place. Close the hatch, and we'll lock that again with our blade screwdriver. Move that into the lock position. Notice taking your beater blade out, your beater bar out, and cleaning all the hair out and stuff every once in a while is a really good idea. This unit is already probably about 5 or 6 years old. We've been using it for a long time. It works great. We love it. Some people say, oh, it doesn't work so well, and one of the reasons maybe is they don't clean out their beater bar periodically. The other thing you can do is you could take a bladed screwdriver. You can pop out these little wheels here. They really get contaminated with hair and might not spin freely, and so you can just take your your blade screwdriver, pop that out. You can see a little axle there will pop out, clean all that nice, and so they spin freely. The other thing that's really important with these Roomies is to make sure you clean the filter. We'll talk about that in a moment. Okay, so here you go. Here's our completed beater bar, our head unit. You can see we still get some twist. We get some up and down. You can see the wire here now, right? We couldn't see that in the past, but I don't care. It's functioning properly. Well, let's double check if it's functioning. We'll slide our wand together and see if it works. And away we go. Now I can twist. Of course, the final thing for this vacuum to work properly is to make sure you clean this regularly. We'll find that we'll dump this, 2 or 3 times even for one power charge. If it sucks up so much. We have a dog, small dog. A lot of hair gets stuck in there. So we're going to clean that out, and I'll show you what I do. So after removing the pink filter and taking that out and dumping that in the trash, we're also going to make sure we take out the HEPA filter. Remove that from the back of this pink filter. And you notice there's a little foam filter on there as well that gets really dusty, catches the vast majority of dust. I'm going to wash that out in the sink. So I just take that and turn on the water, and we're going to give that a wash. Make sure that we get rid of all that dust. We do that regularly, and it keeps the performance of your system top notch. Okay, so give that a rinse. Once I've got that cleaned off, we'll let that dry thoroughly before we use the vacuum once again. The final thing we're going to do is I'm going to blow out this HEPA filter. So I use my leaf blower. I blow all the dust out backwards, and you can buy these as replacement units from Roomie. And we've done that over the course of years, but these should last you for quite a few years if you treat them properly. Notice I did try to clean one once by making it wet, and that completely ruined it. It lost all suction. So I'm going to take this outside and give that a blow. I'll show you what I'm doing there. I've got my leaf blower. Take that HEPA filter, blow backwards to the flow normally.